The day my father chose my brother, I learned that a person could lose everything without losing a single thing they owned. I was standing inside the lawyer's office, staring at the wooden table between us, trying to keep my hands from shaking. My father had been gone for 11 days. 11 days since I had held his hand in the hospital. 11 days since he looked at me with tired eyes and whispered, "Don't worry, everything will make sense soon." I thought those words were a promise. I was wrong. The lawyer opened my father's will. My father's house, he read slowly, is to be transferred to his son Daniel. My brother smiled. The family business will also go to Daniel, along with the savings accounts, investments, and remaining properties. I looked at Daniel. He didn't even look surprised. He leaned back in his chair like he had already known. Then the lawyer continued, "To my daughter." He paused. My heart began pounding. "To my daughter, Emily, I leave." The room became completely silent. I waited. The lawyer looked down at the paper. My love, my prayers, and my hope that she finds peace. That was it. No house, no money, no business, not even the old car I had helped Dad repair every summer. My brother slowly turned toward me. "I'm sorry," he said, but there was no sadness in his voice. There was satisfaction. I forced myself to smile. "Congratulations." The lawyer closed the folder. I stood up, ready to leave. Then he suddenly said, "Emily, please wait." I turned around. He reached beneath the table and pulled out a small brown envelope. My name was written on it in my father's handwriting. My breath caught. "What is that?" The lawyer looked at Daniel, then back at me. "Your father gave me strict instructions. This envelope was not to be opened unless the will had already been read." Daniel's smile disappeared. The lawyer placed it in my hands. "There is something your father wanted you to know." I stared at my name. For the first time that morning, I wondered if my father had really chosen my brother, or if my father had known something none of us did. And whatever was inside that envelope was the reason he had given my brother everything. The daughter who was always second growing up. I learned very early that my brother Daniel and I lived under the same roof, but we did not live the same life. Daniel was the son my father proudly introduced to everyone. I was the daughter he loved quietly. Whenever Daniel won something at school, Dad would take him out for dinner. When he made the football team, Dad bought him new shoes. When Daniel said he wanted to become a businessman, Dad told everyone, "My son will take this family further than I ever could." I was happy for my brother. At least, I tried to be. I was the one who stayed home when Dad worked late. I learned how to cook his favorite meals. When he came home exhausted, I was the one who made him tea and sat beside him while he talked about his problems. Daniel rarely noticed those things. Neither did Dad. When I told my father I wanted to study design, he smiled and said, "That's nice, sweetheart." But when Daniel said he wanted to study business, Dad immediately offered to pay for everything. I remember that night clearly. I went to my room and cried quietly because I didn't want Dad to hear me. Still, I never stopped loving him. Years passed. Daniel joined Dad's company and slowly became the person everyone expected to inherit it. I built my own life. I worked hard, saved money, and learned to stand on my own feet. But whenever family members talked about the future, they always said the same thing. "Daniel will take care of the family." I never argued. Maybe Dad believed Daniel was stronger. Maybe he thought I didn't need anything from him. Then Dad got sick. Everything changed. While Daniel was busy with the company, I spent weeks taking Dad to appointments, sitting beside his hospital bed and helping him with things he could no longer do himself. One evening when the hospital room was almost completely dark, Dad reached for my hand. "You've always been different," he whispered. I smiled sadly. "Different how?" He looked at me for a long moment. "You never asked me for anything." I laughed softly. "Because you're my father. I wasn't helping you because I wanted something." His eyes became wet. "I know." That was all he said. I didn't understand why those two words felt so heavy. A few days later, Before I left the hospital, Dad called me back. "There will come a day when you think I failed you." I froze. "What do you mean?" He squeezed my hand. "Promise me you won't make a decision while you're angry." I promised. Then he smiled. "Good girl." Those were the last words he ever said to me. After his death, I thought I finally understood what he meant. When the will gave Daniel everything, I believed Dad had chosen him one last time. I believed all those years of being second had finally ended with the same painful truth. Daniel was his favorite. I was simply his daughter. But I had forgotten one thing. My father had never been a careless man, and if he had truly wanted to leave me with nothing, he would never have written my name on that envelope. The will that broke me thought I was prepared for my father's will. I wasn't. After the lawyer finished reading, nobody spoke for several seconds. Daniel sat across from me, looking almost uncomfortable with how much he had inherited. The family house, Dad's company, his investment accounts, 2 rental properties, even the old lake cabin where we had spent every summer as children. Everything went to him. Everything. I looked at the lawyer, hoping there had been some mistake. "Are you sure that's all?" The lawyer nodded. "Yes, Emily, that is exactly what your father instructed." My throat tightened. I glanced at Daniel. He finally looked at me. "I didn't ask for this," he said. I almost laughed. "Of course you didn't." He lowered his eyes. But I knew him. Daniel had spent his entire life expecting Dad to hand him the world. And now he had. The lawyer began gathering the documents when Daniel suddenly said, "Emily, Dad probably thought I was better prepared to handle everything." That sentence hurt more than the will itself. "Better prepared? You know what I mean." "No," I said quietly. "I don't." He sighed. "Dad always believed in me." I stared at him. And what did he believe about me? Daniel didn't answer. That silence was enough. I remembered every time I had been told that Daniel was the future of the family. Every sacrifice I had made, every hospital visit, every night I had sat beside Dad when Daniel was too busy to come. And now, apparently, none of it mattered. I stood up. "Congratulations, Daniel." He looked uncomfortable. "Emily, don't." I walked toward the door, then I heard the lawyer behind me. "Emily, before you leave." I stopped. He opened the folder again. "There is one more matter." Daniel's face changed. "What matter?" The lawyer looked directly at me. "Your father left a private instruction concerning your inheritance." Daniel immediately stood. "What inheritance?" The lawyer didn't answer him. Instead, he reached beneath the table and took out a sealed brown envelope. My name was written across the front. I recognized the handwriting instantly. Dad's handwriting. My heart started beating faster. "Your father instructed me to give this to you only after the will was officially read." Daniel stepped closer. "Why didn't I know about this?" The lawyer's expression remained calm. "Because your father specifically told me you were not to know." Daniel froze. For the first time since we entered the room, he looked frightened. I took the envelope with trembling hands. There was only one sentence written beneath my name. "Emily, if you're reading this, your brother believes he has won." I looked at Daniel, then I looked back at the envelope. And suddenly, I wasn't so sure my father had left me with nothing. Dad's secret envelope. He held the envelope for several seconds without opening it. My fingers were trembling. My father's handwriting was right there in front of me. I had seen that handwriting my entire life. On birthday cards, grocery lists, notes he left on the kitchen table. But this felt different. This wasn't a birthday message. This was something he had hidden from everyone, especially Daniel. I slowly tore open the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter and a small silver key. I unfolded the letter. "Emily, if you are reading this, then the will has already been read. I know you are hurt. I know you believe I chose Daniel over you." My eyes filled with tears. He knew. He knew exactly how I would feel. I continued reading, "But please don't judge my decision until you know the truth." I stopped. Daniel was still standing across the room. "What does it say?" he asked. I folded the letter slightly. It's private, he frowned. Emily, I'm your brother, and this is from Dad. He said nothing. I continued reading. I gave Daniel what he believes he wanted, because I needed him to stop looking for something he was never meant to have. My heart raced. What was Dad talking about? Then I reached the final part of the letter. The key belongs to the old study. Behind the third bookshelf, there is a locked drawer. What you find there will explain everything. I looked at the silver key in my palm, the old study. Nobody had entered that room since Dad became sick. Daniel suddenly stepped toward me. Give me the key. I stared at him. Why? His expression changed. I just think we should go together. No, Emily, Dad's property belongs to me now. That sentence made something inside me snap. Then why are you so worried about a key he left me? Daniel went silent. The lawyer watched us carefully. I slipped the key into my pocket. Then I walked out. That evening, I returned to Dad's house alone. The house no longer belonged to me. But for the first time, I wasn't thinking about the house. I walked into Dad's study and stood in front of the old bookshelf. My hands were shaking as I counted. 1, 2, 3. Behind the third shelf, my fingers found a small metal lock. I inserted the key. It clicked. Inside the drawer was a thick file, several property documents, and a photograph of Dad, standing beside a man I had never seen before. But what caught my attention was the first document on top. It had my name on it, and underneath my name were the words, "Sole Beneficiary." I stopped breathing. My father hadn't left me nothing. He had left me something Daniel didn't even know existed. The truth about my brother. Stared at the document with my name on it for what felt like an eternity. Sole Beneficiary. Those two words didn't make sense. If Dad had intended to leave me something this important, why had he given Daniel everything? I turned the pages. The first document was connected to the family company. The second was a property agreement. The third made my hands go cold. It was a report containing financial records from the company. For years, I had believed Daniel was helping Dad build the business. But the records told a different story. Money had been transferred from the company into accounts I didn't recognize, large amounts, after month, and every transaction had been approved using Daniel's authorization. I sat down in Dad's old chair. No, I didn't want to believe it. Daniel had always been difficult, but he was still my brother. I kept reading. Dad had discovered the missing money months before his death. There were copies of emails, bank statements, and signed documents. Dad had confronted Daniel, and Daniel had denied everything. Then I found a letter from Dad. Emily, I tried to give your brother a chance to tell me the truth. He chose another lie. Tears filled my eyes. Suddenly, I remembered something. 2 months before Dad died, Daniel had asked me to sign a document. He told me it was just paperwork related to the family business. I had refused because I didn't understand it. At the time, Daniel became angry. Now I knew why. He had been trying to get control of something he wasn't legally entitled to. I kept reading until I found the final page. Dad had already taken steps to protect the company. Daniel's inheritance was real, but it wasn't what it appeared to be. The house, accounts, and other assets had been placed in his name, but the most valuable part of the business had been transferred into a private trust. And the trust had only one beneficiary. Me. I covered my mouth. Dad hadn't chosen Daniel. He had been protecting me. Then I heard the front door slam. I froze. Emily? Daniel's voice. He was home. I quickly closed the file. His footsteps came closer. He entered the study and looked at me. Then his eyes moved toward the open drawer. You found it. I didn't answer. Daniel's face became pale. Emily, listen to me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't looking at my older brother as the person Dad had always trusted. I was looking at the person Dad had warned me about, and suddenly, I understood why Dad had made me promise not to act while I was angry. He didn't want revenge. He wanted the truth to speak for itself. The second will, hidden legacy. Daniel stood in the doorway, staring at the open drawer. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he walked toward me. "Emily, you don't understand what you're looking at." I held the file against my chest. "Then explain it." He stopped. His eyes moved toward the documents on the desk. "You went through Dad's private papers. Dad left them for me." Daniel shook his head. He was sick. He wasn't thinking clearly. That sentence hurt, not because I believed him, because I finally understood how easily he could dismiss our father when the truth didn't benefit him. I opened the file again. "Did you take money from the company?" Daniel's face changed. "It's complicated. That wasn't my question." He looked away. "Yes." The word came out quietly. My heart sank. "How much?" He didn't answer. "Daniel, how much?" "A lot." I closed my eyes. All those years I had defended him. I had told Dad that Daniel was under pressure. I had told myself that my brother wasn't selfish. But Dad had known. He had known everything. I pulled out the final document. "What is this?" Daniel stared at it. His face went completely pale. It was a second legal agreement. Signed months before Dad died, the family business had been divided into two parts. The visible assets had gone to Daniel, but controlling ownership of the most valuable part had been placed into a private trust, and I was the sole beneficiary. Daniel grabbed the edge of the desk. "No." I looked at him. "What? No. That's not possible. Dad signed it. He couldn't have." "He did." Daniel started pacing. "Then why would he give me the rest?" I finally understood. Dad's letter had explained it. He knew Daniel wanted control, so Dad gave him enough to make him believe he had won. The house, the accounts, the properties, everything Daniel could see, but Dad had protected the one thing that truly mattered, the business he had spent 40 years building. I found another letter beneath the agreement. My hands shook as I opened it. "Emily, I know your brother will believe the inheritance makes him powerful. Let him believe it. Money can make people careless. The truth cannot." Tears rolled down my face. Dad hadn't wanted me to fight Daniel. He wanted me to protect what he had built. Then I reached the final paragraph. "You were never second, Emily. I only needed you to believe you could stand on your own before I gave you what was yours." I couldn't stop crying. For years I had wondered why Dad seemed to trust Daniel more. Now I realized the truth. Dad trusted Daniel with what he could see, but he trusted me with what mattered. Daniel looked at me. "So what happens now?" I wiped my tears. "Nothing." He stared at me. "Nothing. No revenge. No shouting. No fighting." I placed the documents back into the folder. "I'll let the lawyers handle everything." For the first time, Daniel looked powerless, and I finally understood Dad's secret. He hadn't left me a fortune. He had left me the truth. And sometimes, the truth is more powerful than anything money can buy. The moment my brother found out the next morning, Daniel came to my apartment before I had even finished my coffee. He didn't knock twice. He pushed the door open and walked in like he still owned everything. "Where are the documents?" I looked at him calmly. "What documents? You know exactly what I'm talking about." His voice was different now. The confidence he had shown in the lawyer's office was gone. I placed my coffee down. "The documents Dad left me?" Daniel stared at me. "Those belong to the family." "No," I said. "They belong to me." He laughed nervously. "You really think Dad wanted you to take control of his company?" "He didn't give me control." I paused. "He protected it." Daniel's face went pale. I could see the moment he realized I wasn't confused anymore. I knew about the money. I knew about the transfers. I knew Dad had discovered everything. And most importantly, I knew about the trust. "You read everything," he whispered. "Yes. Emily, listen to me, I can explain. You had years to explain." He looked down. "I was going to fix it. Dad waited for you to tell him the truth." Daniel's eyes filled with anger. "He always favored you." I almost smiled. "That's what you believe. He gave me everything." "Yes," I said quietly. "And you thought that meant you had won." Daniel froze. I walked to the table and placed one document in front of him. He looked at it, then another. His hands started shaking. "The controlling shares." He couldn't finish the sentence. I nodded. They're mine. Daniel sat down. For the first time, he looked like the little boy I remembered from childhood. Not the successful businessman everyone admired, just my brother, scared, lost, and finally facing the truth. "I didn't know Dad hated me," he whispered. My heart broke. "He didn't." I looked at him. "He loved you enough to give you one last chance to change." Daniel looked up. "And you?" I took a breath. Dad trusted me enough to tell me the truth. Neither of us spoke. Then I remembered Dad's final words, "Don't make a decision while you're angry." So I didn't. I didn't destroy Daniel. I didn't humiliate him. I simply handed the documents to the lawyer and let Dad's truth do what revenge never could. It changed everything. What Dad really left me. A few months later, the company was stable again. Daniel had stepped away from the business. We weren't close like we had been as children, but we weren't enemies either. Sometimes, I still thought about the day Dad's will was read. I remembered sitting there, believing I had been forgotten, believing my brother had finally received everything while I had been left with nothing. But I understand now. Dad never wanted me to inherit his money first. He wanted me to inherit his trust. One evening, I returned to his old study. I sat in his chair and opened the letter one more time. At the bottom, there was a sentence I hadn't noticed before. "My greatest gift to you was never what I owned. It was knowing who you could become." I cried that night, not because I was angry anymore, because I finally understood him. My brother inherited the house. He inherited the money. He inherited the things everyone could see, but I inherited something far more important. My father's faith in me. The secret he left behind had changed my life, but not because it made me powerful. It taught me that being overlooked doesn't mean being forgotten. Sometimes, the person standing quietly in the background is the one someone has been preparing for the greatest responsibility of all. I closed the letter and whispered, "Thank you, Dad." And for the first time since he died, I smiled, because my father hadn't left me nothing. He had left me everything that truly mattered.